Alright, hello. We are Semiahmoo Arts Society, and we're here with the amazingly talented Margaret Burns for an interview. So, how are you doing today, Margaret?
Fine, thank you. Very fine.
Okay. Well, I got a lot of artsy questions later, but I figured for the beginning we just talk about like your earlier life before you were an artist, like where you're from, like where you're born, and all that.
I was born in England, in Bournemouth, to a family of 6 children and my mum and dad. We moved around quite a bit, and I had no interest in art whatsoever. That and home ec was not my thing. So when we went into art class, they used to send me to mark the math books.
You didn't even go to art class?
No.
Really?
Because I was too disruptive.
Nice.
It wasn't until I was in my 30s that I found the right side of my brain. And that was more from necessity.
Yeah.
Because within a week of one another, both my husband and I got laid off from our jobs. And we had 2 youngsters, and we had to make a living. And we weren't the type to go on welfare, so we started making hand-carved sand candle. And we used to travel from Toronto to Ottawa in an old station wagon. And the kids would sleep on the seats, and we would sleep in the back. And the very back, was where our candles were stored. And we used to sell our candles on the Ottawa Art Centre steps. They used to have an art show there.
Wow.
And we started travelling doing the art shows with all the candles. And a lot of people were candle makers would not set up at the same show as us because we did so well.
Really? You guys were really good.
And it's funny because we did candles and our name was Burns.
Yeah, that works too.
And they'd see, oh, we're not going to be there doing that show.
Yeah, because you guys are too good.
Yeah.
There's just too much competition.
And ours was very, very different. And our art, you could say our business, was called World of Difference. So we made a very particular point that everything we did was different. But I did the designing, and when we first started making them, we were in an apartment. And when we used to stand at the elevator with a box in our hand, and people...
It's not nice.
And they say, somebody on this floor burns a lot of candles.
No doubt.
Making candles.
Yeah.
In the kitchen.
What was the art style that you guys added? What was the artistic spin that you added to the creation of candles?
Well, when you make a sand candle, you put it in wet sand. And I did the designing of you make a plaster mold, put it in the sand. But once we took it out of the sand, we carved into it so that some of the sand was missing, and they would glow through the bottom. Cool. And then we made markings at the top, and nobody could figure out how we did this marking. And all it was leather marking tools that we hit. Because when you hit the can wax, coloured wax, it turned white. So we had all these designs in the top, and then we'd heat over it so they were underneath the wax, and it looked like those designs were floating.
Whoa, cool.
And nobody knew how we did it.
Oh, okay.
And it was funny, many times other candle makers would send a relative over to our table and say, oh, these are nice. How did you do
they wanted the secret sauce. They wanted secret
And my
formula.
husband always had an expression, he'd say, with a lot of years of experience.
Yeah. Well, how did you guys come up with that method of creating those sort of floating designs?
It was just a fluke.
It was a fluke, eh?
Because somehow I hit the candle and it went white, and my husband said, oh, it's all right, just heat it over. But that white spot stayed there. What a good idea. And I'm always experimenting.
Yeah.
So he had some leather tools, I don't know even where he got them from. And we thought, well, let's try this. So we started doing that. And we had all the different shapes of the leather tools that they used. And then we heated over it, and there you go. And it was such a simple thing.
But it looked cool, and no one else had that style.
Exactly. And somebody else said, oh, how do you do that?
Yeah, so that was kind of a mystery. And also at that time of your life, it was a life on the road, too. You guys were living in a camper van.
We traveled a lot.
What was that like? Can you talk a bit about
It was fun.
It was kind of like
we
fun.
had no money.
Yeah.
And we travelled to Ottawa and you'd make $75. You thought you'd made a fortune.
Yeah.
And we hooked up with a group that was actually run by 2 lawyers, and they were an American group, and we travelled all over with them. Then we started going south. We started doing a thing called printmaking, and we had international old art prints. We did that for years, and we did so well with those that people would order them before we even got to the show, so we were half sold out.
Really? So how did you start making, where did you learn how to do prints, first of all?
My husband got into it to start with, and
So your husband's very artistic as well?
he's gone.
Yeah.
I lost him 36 years ago. But we were always, he was never really interested in art, because when he was younger, he was a good artist, but his father wanted him to be a mechanic. And the artist said, Cyril Cryer, I think his name was, the artist said, well, you can't be a mechanic and be a good artist because your hands are destroyed. The mechanic's hands wouldn't make him a good artist. And his father insisted that he follow in his footsteps to become a mechanic, which he did.
That's a constant,
So
usual story.
I'm not interested in it at all.
Okay.
So
He kind of gave it up.
Yeah.
Or did he suppress that side of it?
Right, he suppressed it. And then we travelled and went down to the States, and our last show was always in Windsor. So the kids knew that their Christmas present was going to Florida.
Okay.
They didn't get gifts. And we used to cross the border Christmas morning and go to Florida. And we'd stay down there. We extended the time until we were down to 6 months of the year. And then we started doing things down there, and I started designing toys, and I did pop-up puppets. And
how did you do it? Did you sew them, or what were they made of?
Sew them, yeah.
Okay. So they're all like, they weren't made of wood or anything like
No, they were all one of a kind.
You made like dolls?
I made finger puppets and one of a kind dolls. And I made those for a while, but I would find that when I mastered a new thing, I'd get tired of it.
Yeah.
And then I went into doing batik.
What is batik?
Batik is a dye process. You know what tie-dye is?
Yeah.
Well, it's an extension of tie-dye where you use wax. Like you make a design and you wax out where you don't want the colour to go. Well, I mastered that and I got tired of it. So I did some sculptural weaving and I made big masks. And I didn't stick to that too long because you didn't make any money out of it.
That's interesting. So you're very much like an experimentalist. You're always trying out new
Yeah, I
things.
did a lot of experimenting. And
does it seem like you're very inspired by trends at the time? You're just more inspired by just like creating your own thing?
no, I was always doing my own thing.
Yeah.
And
That's a true artist.
when we went down to Florida, of course, we extended it, and eventually we just stayed there.
In Florida?
In Florida, and the Florida Keys.
Was Florida like the kind of crazy out
It
there?
was great.
Yeah.
And the artists, there were big art groups down there.
Yeah.
We did the Coconut Grove show, which even to this day is a very, very big show. And, up here they say, oh, there's too many artists, too much competition. We did shows where there were 400 artists.
Yeah.
And everybody made money.
Yeah.
They didn't whine about it. I'm sorry I say this, but in Canada they do. Yeah, they're always afraid somebody else is going to make money and you're not, and they're not.
And what was back then, maybe from what was different back then, is that there was community.
As
So everyone elevated each other. They all made money together.
Right.
It wasn't like me versus you. You're stealing the attention, my attention.
Exactly, and everybody worked together, and there was a camaraderie there that there isn't here, I find.
Yeah.
And I found this when I came back, very much so in BC.
Yeah.
And we stayed down there, and we did shows. And I was doing the dolls. And I said to my husband one day, I got tired of doing the dolls, and I said to my husband one day, I would like to do watercolours. I just wanted to do something new, and it had to be with a challenge, because if I don't have a challenge, I'm bored.
It's boring, yeah.
So he said, we'll go out, and he bought me the best paper, the best brushes, and the best That's paint.
Yeah, that's right.
Winsor Newton paints, Arches paper, and good brushes. And I was just playing around with it, and 2 weeks later he booked me into an art show. I said, "You've got to be kidding, I'm not going."
He booked without your knowledge?
He booked without.
He
said, "Well, now you've got to go because I paid for it." Yeah. So I entered 2 pieces in the actual jury part of it. And we had the wine and cheese like you do for the opening, and we stood there, and it was the curator of the Fine Arts Museum in Miami, was the curator of the show, the jurist. And she kept saying, "Margaret Burns," and I'm looking around for somebody else, because this is the second award. And my husband said, "It's you, you idiot."
You're surprised.
And then
sure?
I didn't believe it. So I went up and accepted it. And then, of course, we had a little setup outside. And she came out and she said, "Oh, you're Margaret Burns. This is your work." And I said, "Do you know I've just been painting for 2 weeks?" And she said, "Well, young lady, you've got it. Keep it up." And I've been painting ever since. I just kept going and kept experimenting, messing and playing around with it. And I've been doing it for 54 years this year. I lived down the road from the college.
Okay.
I wanted something else to do, so I looked up and printmaking, and that should do it.
That's fun.
So I signed up and I stayed there 6 years.
That's awesome.
Because I
Must
did
have
a
loved it.
4-year program, and I kept signing up, and then I found out I could go for free, because they brought in the program if you were over 65. And so I signed up as an independent, just to use their equipment. Beautiful presses, all the equipment. And all you had to do was to pay for the supply. So I wasn't interested in certificates, where the younger people wanted their certificates, to say that they'd passed and they'd become a good printmaker.
You don't care about that.
I didn't care.
You already made money. You already have the credentials.
Yeah, I wanted it to make money out of it.
Yeah. Well, it seems like your whole life, like you always play by your own rules. You live like almost a very alternative lifestyle.
Well, my dad always said nobody would sit on me.
Yeah. No one could stop you from doing it.
Nobody could stop me doing what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Unapologetically living.
Right. Yeah.
So, but before that, before you were into art, you had a series of like other jobs. You were a police officer at some point.
I used to work on the buses in England. I worked in a candy factory when I was 14. And you can imagine me doing it. Your job was to put the candies in the machine as it went round.
Did you hate it?
I would go and get a new job and go there like first thing in the morning.
You just try it out. You're always trying new things, right?
Right, and I would go. Most of the jobs were close to home, so I could go home at lunchtime. And I'd say, my dad used to say, "Well, what's it like?" I said, "Oh, it's great, it's great." Go home at 5 o'clock, say I'm not going back.
You look at one day, and the next day it's like a hot and cold. Right?
Yeah. And I was in the Air Force as an ambulance driver.
As what? As an ambulance driver?
Ambulance driver,
Oh.
yeah. I like speed, and I still...
You still do?
Drive a Jeep.
Okay.
And so I became a driver in the Air Force. I did 2 years there, and then two of my brothers and my sister had come to Canada, and I wanted to come to Canada, but you come out of the Air Force, you've got no money. So I'm figuring out how can I come to Canada. And there's a magazine in England called The Lady, and it advertises jobs for nannies or housekeepers all over the world.
That's right.
So I thought, try this. And I needed my fare paid, I needed accommodation. And what job would supply that but a nanny?
Yeah.
So I found one, you paid the fare, you got fed, and your accommodation were all covered. Wow. So I applied, never thinking I would get it. And the next thing I get an airline ticket in the mail. I got the job. I was looking at jobs and it said, women police officer, we're just starting the women's police force in Toronto.
Yeah.
So I thought, why not?
Yeah.
Try anything once. So I applied, and they almost go back to how you slept in your crib, finding out what you not did.
Oh, like a background check, you mean?
Background check.
Did you have dirt on your name or anything like that?
Oh, I was a pretty good girl.
Okay.
I didn't do anything serious.
That's good.
I was just mischievous.
Okay.
So I had to give them a reference of a school. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to get a good reference from school because I was always playing around.
Oh, really?
I spent more time sat on the stool behind the other kids because I was giggling and laughing, you know.
Maybe that was how you expressed your creativity back then, just being more like hyperactive or bombastic.
Right. Anyway, I was called in for an interview, and they said, you've got a shining reference from your school.
Were you surprised?
Surprised, I was shocked. I thought, she can't remember me.
Yeah, but she did.
She did, yeah. And she sent a really glowing reference for me. And I thought, she can't possibly remember who it was, because we were making a blouse, and I thought, I hate this. And she said, you'll finish this if it kills me. Under my breath, I was, you'll be dead first. And I would get the sleeves on wrong with the cup. I never did finish it.
Oh, really? It was just for your art class or something?
It was for home ec.
For home ec. Textiles.
Or
yeah,
bake or whatever. I wasn't into that kind
I feel like you don't really like rules. You don't like people telling you what to do.
Don't tell me what to do, because it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
And so, anyway, she gave me, and I was in the police force, and then I wanted to get married. And at the time, you couldn't be married because a woman police officer. Because now it's changed. You can go to war if you were married. So I knew I was going to have kids, so I got out of it. We kind of had a really hard struggle from then on.
Like financially?
Yeah, financially, different things going wrong, and I would take a job to
like a survival.
Support ourselves. Yeah. And I also worked when my kids were little. I worked as a cake decorator, and I taught myself cake decorating. But
so that's like kind of like the beginning of like some creative work.
Yeah, anything that I'm kind of getting into creative work, and I did the cake decorating, and then when we went to Florida, I got a job down there and worked in a multi-million-dollar holiday resort, and I worked for the interior decorator there, and I got to know, really some wealthy people. And I've always treated people as I wish to be treated. I don't care if you've got $20 million or $160 million. You're a person.
Yeah.
Where you made your money was your job. That doesn't make you a person.
Yeah.
And I've always treated people like that, with respect, understanding. And I got on with people very, very well. I got invited to dinners, and I did floral designs on $60 million boats and all that kind of thing.
Awesome.
And
what was life on the road like for like kids and whatnot? Did you teach them on the road?
Kids loved it.
Yeah.
That's for that. When we rented a house in B-side in Toronto, and we gave the kids a choice. They were 2 years apart, so they would be like 12 and 14. And we gave them a choice: did they want to go on the road permanently, or did they want to stay? They wanted to go on the road. So,
how many were you guys on the road for like years, or how long?
No, just a couple of years. We were going to Florida. Then of course we extended the time down in Florida and just stayed there, which actually was illegal.
Did your kids get taken out of school for a little bit too?
Yeah, we took the kids out of school.
Right, homeschooling.
Then they learned on the road.
You weren't. I feel like you weren't just as much like on the road, but like through experience. I think probably more.
Right. I think you learn a lot more.
Yeah.
Because you got life experience.
Yeah.
And
So they probably really appreciate that experience.
I know my kids did, and my daughter's very, very knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And if she doesn't quite understand something, she'll really look into it.
She can look into it or talk with her.
Yeah, there isn't a thing you can ask her that she can't tell you.
Yeah.
And she's 58 now. And my son, he's always been in heavy equipment operator.
Are they creative as well?
Kim is with it. She's partially disabled. She's losing the use of the right hand from a work-related job, working at Walmart. And so when I moved over here, sold my home and moved over here, I set her up on the end of our driveway, and she sells bouquets of flowers. And she does some nice wedding bouquets.
Bouquets.
Sets up bouquets and does dish gardens and all that kind of thing. My son, he's always been, when we moved to Florida, he became a heavy equipment operator, and he can make a machine talk.
Nice. Can I ask you some questions about your creativity and whatnot? I wondering maybe why do you feel like you create art? Why did you get into that? Besides necessity, do you feel like it's
Mostly, it was mostly out of necessity, but then I found the right side of my brain, and I love to create, I love to experiment, and I'm doing that all the time. Like instead of doing watercolour on paper now, I do watercolour on canvas.
Yeah, you're always experimenting. And when you're experimenting, do you feel like you're kind of go into a flow? What does it feel like?
I get into it, and I won't. When I first started watercolour on canvas, people said you can't do that.
Yeah.
It's meant to be on paper.
Yeah.
And as soon as you say that word can't,
then you want to do
it.
Then
I want to do it, and I prove everybody wrong.
And you can make it look good too.
And I do. You know, you can see in my pictures that I could do anything I want.
Maybe that's like your inspiration to prove people wrong. You love to prove people wrong.
I stick my heels in and say, "Watch me."
Yeah. Do you ever feel? I feel like people maybe. Do you ever feel like blocked creatively? Like you don't know what to do next, or
yeah, sometimes
or do you want something else?
I'll get like a blank canvas or something, and I'm thinking, and I'll walk away and leave it, or I'll come back later in the evening and start working, and then my brain starts to work.
Yeah, you just got to find the right time, I guess.
I've got to find
and you can't try too hard.
Yeah. And I push myself sometimes, because I'm 90 years old. I get tired, and that's the one thing that I get angry about is that I don't feel 90. I feel, well, my doctor said I had the body of a 70-year-old, and I had to go into hospital I had a kind of an episode with, acid reflux, and it gave me pains in my chest. And she said, I've never seen a person of your age have such a clear brain.
I'm surprised that you still make art at your age.
Yeah.
Can you tell the camera how old you are?
90.
You're 90 years old, still making art.
Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Maybe like a philosophical question. Where do you think our creativity comes from? Do you think it's all from the brain, or?
I think it comes from the brain. I think anybody can be an artist.
Yeah.
I think you just have to try and be persistent.
And look within yourself and find it.
Right, exactly, because as I said, I had no interest in it whatsoever. And same with home ec and sewing and all that. Yeah, I ended up making my husband's suits.
Yeah.
Because, and once you get started, if you keep, persistent, you can do anything as far as the art's concerned.
So what's
it's what you find interesting?
Yeah. So what's your artistic process typically? Do you always switch new things? So you don't really have a set process, right?
I don't really have a process. I just get into it.
You start moving your hands and something comes out hopefully.
Yeah.
So do you draw? You said you drew inspiration from people saying you couldn't do something. Do you draw inspiration from other artists or anything like that? Or pay attention to any other artists?
Not really.
You have no favorite artists either?
No. I like some of the older British artists like Turner and also what's his name? Winslow and Palmer.
Some of the classicals.
Yeah, some of the older. But I'm not really influenced by anybody. I just do my thing.
That's good.
I don't copy people. I don't do what they do.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think we've had a pretty good interview. I think I had a lot of fun talking. So I think we'll wrap it up here. All right, thanks, Margaret.
You're very welcome.